Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Normie Recertification Training. Today is August 1st, 2023. I want to welcome everybody here and pose a question to everybody in the room and out on all the social media platforms. Can somebody please tell me what happened to June and July of this year? Because they are gone and it was a blur. I mean, I'm looking at my admin people here going, we don't know. It just kind of flew by. So hopefully the rest of you knew where it went because we certainly don't. Has been busy. And if you watch their faces, my next statement is going to change it because we're first getting to the busy season now. Things are going to start ramping up. I can tell you just with training alone, I mean, I'm scheduled to be in Fort Lauderdale several times, Las Vegas several times, Mexico. We're going to be all over the place. So we got a lot of things happening, and I think the pace is just going to increase. So let us get started for today. Admin people, glad to see you all in the room. I see a comment just came into the room here. June and July went north for the summer. Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right, because I'm up here in New Jersey, and we are definitely getting southern Florida weather. Bright sunny skies and pouring rain in the backyard. It's absolutely bizarre what's going on. And I know the Midwest is looking at the same stuff. So with that said, I want to get moving here with our presentation, and then we'll get into some announcements and stuff after that. I will tell you that this presentation is one of the 5-part series that we did on the Canadian wildfires. And I wanted to do this session tonight, and as you can hear, my voice is going out a little bit, because 2 weeks ago, we had another round of smoke come through New Jersey. And it's been ongoing since the Canadian fire started and we started getting affected here on the East Coast. But I was absolutely fine for Tuesday night CE training that we did a few weeks ago. That night, I cut my grass. I lost my voice the next day. Today is really one of the first days that it's back. And from the people that I've been dealing with in the area, this is not uncommon. Sinus infections, people losing their voice, eye infections, ear infections. So the smoke issue is still out there. You don't see it in the news, but you need to be aware of it. And if you get a chance, you can always check the outdoor air quality in your neighborhood, and you will see it's pretty poor throughout a good part of the country right now. All right, well, I want to get started. We have an interview with Michael Pinto. He specializes in sensitized individuals, and very interesting presentation he does, and it makes you think about the indoor air quality industry that we deal with. So I'm going to ask everyone on my admin team to shut down their video and mics. I'm going to do the same, and we're going to get started. If there's any questions, we'll try to answer them as we go. And for our Normie members, remember that when this presentation is done, we will be shutting down the live feeds to all the social media platforms, and we will be continuing our training here in the Normie Zoom room at impact.normie.org. And we will also have some product training after this presentation. So stand by, everybody. It takes me a few seconds to get this going, and we'll be watching for your questions and comments. I want to welcome my guest today, Michael Pinto, who is the CEO of Wonder Makers. Now, I've known Mike for quite a few years, and we've done quite a few trainings together over the years and been at many conventions. And he is a wealth of knowledge when it deals with indoor environments as far as sensitized individuals. And that's the purpose of having him here today. The recent outbreak of forest fires in Canada has really changed what's been going on, at least in the central to the eastern part of the United States. Now, I know California has its own issues with wildfires, but that hasn't reached us to this point. But this is a new situation with these fires, with the winds coming out of the north and northwest blowing straight down into the major population areas of the United States on the eastern coast. So I want to bring Mike in here and let him say a quick hello. And if there's anything I missed on the intro, Mike, please let me know, and whoever else is watching this know also. So Mike, say hello.
Well, thanks, Lance. I appreciate being here very much. What I would say, however, is that it's not just the eastern coast. That smoke plume from the Canadian forest fires is literally cutting across the good section of the Midwest too. So here in Michigan, we're not quite as bad as you guys out there on the East Coast, but it's not good either.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, you're obviously further north and closer to the Canadian border than I am. I'm in New Jersey. Is it affecting you, and how is it affecting your area?
Well, yes, it is affecting us. And as I said just a moment ago, it's not good. Anytime you get outdoor air quality that's worse than what you typically get inside, that's a whole flip on the issue in terms of the things that we're used to thinking about and even teaching in a lot of our classes, because the standard line from the EPA is that the outside air can be up to 20 times cleaner than the inside air. And, people spend 90% of their time inside. And so bad indoor air can cause a real problem. And a lot of us in the industry are focused on that. And then when we are faced with a situation like this, where the outside air is dangerous to people, and that is the case, it is literally dangerous to people, then what do? Where do you go to hide, so to speak? So it is impacting us here in the Midwest. The way that it sets up, there's kind of like an arc of smoke that's coming down from Canada, and we're on what would be the left-hand edge of that arc here in Michigan. And Lake Michigan seems to be the borderline in terms of keeping the clean air, over to Chicago and to the west. But right down through Michigan and Indiana and Ohio, and then over Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, the entire East Coast is pretty well hit right now by the residue from the forest fires.
Yeah, we've seen, especially wintertime with Lake Michigan, it creates its own weather systems. So I could see how that would become a border, keeping the weather at bay, or the smoke at bay in that part. But what's really interesting is all the news stations, that's all they're talking about now, the unhealthy air conditioning outside and inside that we have to deal with. And, this is kind of like the dirty water glass scenario. We know what's in the outdoor air and the indoor air all the time, and you can't see it, so nobody pays attention to it. Well, not nobody, we do, the industry people do. But if you were to hand somebody a glass of water that had a brown tinge to it, it was discolored, people wouldn't drink it because they could see it and they would know there was things in there that they don't want to take in, even though it does contain, mercury and all kinds of other nasty contaminants regularly. And the same thing that's happening now with the air quality, people can see it. And that's really, I think, what's jumping out and causing people to really take notice to what's going on. You're absolutely right. Normally, the outside air is much better than the inside air. So when people are inside, they normally go outside to breathe better, and they can't in this case. They have to hide inside. So that brings us to the sensitized people that we were talking about. This is, something that's, very close and dear to you. We deal with it on a daily basis here at Normie with people that can't get help from regular assessors, remediators, people that are in the industry, which is why you have a class. You're the lead instructor, the NCRSI class, the class for sensitized individuals. Actually, it's teaching remediators how to deal with them. And also the certified mold professional, which is expanding even beyond that. So those are two of your specialties. And with that, maybe you can answer this question. How come the outside air right now, obviously beyond people being emotionally reacting to it, so troublesome for sensitized individuals, even more so than regular people?
Well, what I would start off with is saying that I think when you're dealing with outside air like we are today, it's everybody has to be concerned about it. The difference is that the sensitized individuals have to be concerned at a higher level than even the normal folks. So I'm sure you've heard over there on the East Coast, they're canceling certain sporting events and outdoor activities and things like that because the air just isn't healthy. And so you want to be, limiting your amount of exposure, just like we tell people in a, water damaged or mold damaged house. Sometimes they have to get out of that house to protect their health. The problem here, of course, as we've been talking about, where do you go if it's the whole outside that's contaminated by the forest fires? And so we're literally looking at it, flipping the whole script upside down, if you will. We now have to think about the houses and the air in the houses being a refuge for the people from what they're potentially going to be exposed to on the out of doors. And for the sensitized individual, it's even more significant for them because a lot of times we talk about mold sensitized individuals, and that's where it starts. But virtually every sensitized individual that I'm familiar with and have worked with over 20 plus years now, they develop cross sensitivities. So they start out with a mold exposure that causes a decrease in their health, and then they become sensitive to other things. They become sensitive to tobacco smoke that they weren't sensitive to before. They become sensitive to some of the chemicals like, low levels of formaldehyde in the home that perhaps they weren't sensitive before. Perfumes, all sorts of things. They develop these cross sensitivities. And when we're dealing with the outside air that's impacted by the wildfires, it's particulates, it's volatile organic compounds, and it's gases. So if they're cross-sensitive to anything, it's going to be in one of those categories, and then they're going to have problems with it. So that's really the issue.
I have a few calls into different contacts at different labs that we normally use, especially the ones that deal with VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. And I'm waiting on those callbacks that we just made recently. But I'm looking for what might be in this new smoke plume that we're getting that could be so offensive to people with and without sensitivities. I don't know if you know any of the chemistries that may be, involved with this, though I have noticed the burning odor, and it's different than normal. This isn't like a wood fireplace or a fire pit.
Right, and some of that is going to be dependent upon what sort of forest are burning, whether they're hardwoods or evergreens, things like that. The evergreen forest, which is a good share of what's burning up in Canada right now, because they're closer to the Arctic Circle and that sort of stuff. So those are going to have a lot more PAHs, aromatic hydrocarbons in them, and that's from the oils and everything that's burning in the pine trees and the spruce trees and that sort of stuff. So then you're also going to get a whole chemical stew, if you will, from that, because depending on the temperature and whether they're exposed to actual flame or just the heat from it, where it is, whether it's protected by the bark, all these other things, you just get this massive amount of organic compounds that get liberated into the air during these fires. And then the ash and the smoke, which is basically both of those are small particulates, those tend to sometimes be even more airborne than the VOCs, because the chemicals can be a little sticky and a little heavy. But when they attach to these small ash particles, then they're transported, as we're finding out, thousands of miles into the airstream. The heat of the forest fire pushes them up a mile or more, and then they're in the airstream and they're, heading downstream. But by the time that it gets to New York City or Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I am, or things like that, most of the gases, the carbon monoxide, the excess carbon dioxide, the nitrogen compounds and that sort of stuff, that's pretty well mixed and diluted. So the two things that are impacting the folks there on the East Coast and the sensitized individuals are mostly going to be those volatile organic compounds, which are those PAHs and particles. So,
on a small scale, I've been involved with emergency medical services for almost 50 years. And I've seen over the years people having severe reactions to being around a fire pit or a campfire. And when you start to look into it, you find out that it wasn't from the wood that they're burning. It was from the accidental dumping of poison ivy into the fire pit that was still around some of the logs. And as they burn the poison ivy, it's aerosolizing and getting encased in that smoke, and they're inhaling that and having severe reactions to it.
Well, and then think of everything else that's going on there. The PAHs I was talking about, the first word for the P is phenols. So there's all these different phenolic compounds that are getting burned up, and that's your oils, and that's your your irritants, like you were talking about with poison ivy. But remember, forest fires don't stay forest fires. I mean, they run across roads, and they literally will melt the tar on an asphalt road, and sometimes the roads actually start to burn. So now you've got all of that oil product, anything that's a building in the way, or a vehicle that gets trapped in the fire, or a house. Of course, you're going to have all of the man-made products, artificial products that there then burn. That all goes up in the air, and comparatively, that may be a small percentage of what's burning, but from the sensitized individual, that can actually be a bigger issue sometimes than just the individual smoke particles. Like you said, it's what attaches to the smoke particles. And then those smoke particles are so small, they get breathed in, they go deep into the lungs. And that whole combination, small particles going deep into the lungs and small particles carrying, pardon the expression, crap deep into the lungs. That's not a scientific term there, by the way, Lance. That's just a common term. But there's so much stuff that's on it. It's hard to know from breath to breath what's actually being taken in. And so, again, caution is the byword for anyone, but particularly for the sensitized individuals.
In the remediation industry, in the meteorological industry, they refer to things, especially with hurricanes, hide from the wind, run from the water, because of the amount of damage that can be done. You can hide from the wind, take shelter of that, but in water you can't. Water's going to seep into everything. But we're dealing with something that's unique here because we're 1,000 miles away from these fires, and we are severely being affected. So running isn't really a realistic situation. I think knowledge is something that would help. People understanding the risks, understanding, well, maybe today's not the day to go outside and, cut my grass, and spend a good 2 hours or 3 hours out there in this serious weather or this heavy fog of smoke. And understanding that will definitely help people. But forecasting this is also an issue. So where could people go to find out how bad their area is and what their risks are to being outside?
Well, I'm sure everybody has their own favorite sources, and there's, weather channels and local governments and state governments, and everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon. The one that I use, and it's just, again, my favorite because it's going to be there anytime you have these wildfires and stuff, is a federal government website, and that is, let me make sure I've got it here so that everybody knows, fire.airnow, as in AIRNOW.gov. airnow.gov. And that one's really cool because you punch on that and it brings up a map of basically North America. And it shows where the plume is coming down with the smoke, where the air quality is being impacted. And then it rates it at each major city, and it's not even just major, it's each fairly significant size city has a dot on it that's either green, which means that it's good air quality, or yellow, which means it's questionable. And then most people think, well, then you get to red and that's bad. But this map actually goes 2 other levels. It goes to like purple and to black. And I looked yesterday, Lance had it, and knowing where you are in New Jersey, I just kind of looked to see where you are, blew it up to look and see in your location. You guys were black. So you're in the heart of it right now.
Yeah, yesterday was really bad. This morning it wasn't too bad, but then we did get an alert that it was going to be going downhill as the day went on. And looking outside now, in June, not a cloud in the sky, it looks like sunset. So, it's that dark. I do have a question. If you were speaking to sensitized individuals as your customers or as a group, what would you tell them to do? I mean, normally, if they're inside their home and they're having reactions to that, they go outside. Now they have to stay inside. So what can they do now that they're in their environments that sometimes give them trouble anyways?
Well, I'm going to approach that from 2 different perspectives, if that's okay. The first one, and I don't mean to sound like I told you so, but you do have to understand, if you're a sensitized individual, it's important for you to take steps now to get your indoor environment clean, because we don't know when we're going to have situations like this where all of a sudden, from no fault of our own, like you said, 1,000 miles away, they got a forest fire and it's having a serious impact on us. And if for some reason our sensitized individuals are saying, well, it's not that bad, and if it does get real bad, or if it gets damper in the house, I can always go outside, or whatever it is, that deferred maintenance or that deferred decision making really is going to have a serious negative impact on them in situations like this, because there may just be times where you can't get away, get away from the problems in your house by leaving your house. You outside, you may be actually facing greater problems than you have in your house. So the first item is just never defer fixing things that you can fix now until some later date, just because it doesn't seem important to you.
Well, it's the clean glass of water. It's not a concern because you don't see a problem. As soon as it's, brownish or discolored, now it's on your mind. Same thing with the air.
Yep, exactly right. But it would be the same thing. That's why they have, on occasion you'll have boil water orders as well, right? They don't know exactly what's wrong with the water system. And so they tell people to boil the water. That's why one of the things that they chat about, even in front of hurricanes and things, is get a few cases of bottled water so that you can survive, a couple of days if you have to, without having water coming out of your tap. Fix your house. If you know you've got things going on in your house that are contaminants or whatever, get rid of those, fix it, do the remediation properly so that you've got a good, safe place to be. And then you can, potentially survive a little bit better during these outdoor air quality incidents. But putting that aside, because at some point that's water under the dam. Either they have fixed it or they haven't fixed it, but now they're still facing what's going on outside. So the first thing, and the first couple here, I'm just repeating the standard safety precautions that you're going to get from just about any site. If you don't have to go outside, or you can limit your time outside, don't go outside and limit your time outside. If you do go outside, wear some sort of respiratory protection. I know that I'm seeing a lot of information where people are talking about, you can use your COVID mask and stuff like that. And the answer is, face masks that were being sold as COVID protection. I won't get into that whole discussion all over again, but that is not going to be appropriate, particularly for the sensitized individuals. At a minimum, they're going to need like an N95, and we recommend N99 or N100 filtering face pieces. So that's going to protect a lot coming in. And remember too that a entry spot for some of this contamination into your body is not just the nose and mouth, but the eyes as well. And fire residue is even worse because of the small particle. So when those get into your eyes and then get diluted by the tears and everything, it actually releases some of those chemicals that are on the particle itself. So the particle may wash out, you know, and get it out of our eyes and everything. But what is left behind and what's being absorbed in through your eyes is some of the chemicals and stuff. So remembering to wash your face when you come in from the outside, wearing a mask to protect yourself, changing clothes if you've been outside for any length, you're not carrying a lot of this stuff in. A lot of similar things that we would talk about if you're coming in from a moldy environment or trying to protect yourself from a moldy environment.
You know, you mentioned about masks, and again, I agree. I don't want to go down that path, and let's talk about masks, good or bad. But just to remind people that just because you're wearing a mask, whether it's an N95, N99, N100, half-face mask with cartridges, it doesn't protect you from the gases. You know, you're getting filtration from particulates only. Now, that's a good and a bad thing, because especially if you are a sensitized individual, you may also have additional health issues and stuff. You're wearing a mask that's doing a good job filtering particulates. You're going to reduce the amount of air that you can actually breathe in without straining. And again, if you're not trained to wear a mask, if you're not trained to know when you need to take the mask off, when to replace the mask, it could be just as serious as not having a mask. So again, training, preparing, I guess, is kind of in the same thing that you were talking about.
Well, a little bit, although I would say in this particular case, as I mentioned earlier, by the time the contamination, you know, goes 100 miles, 1,000 miles, whatever it is, the gaseous portions of that, we're not generally seeing high concentrations of carbon monoxide or even the elevated you know, levels of the nitrogen oxides and stuff like that by the time it hits like New York City or something like that. So wearing the filtering protecting mask is actually a very good step, because as I said, even some of the phenols and the aromatic hydrocarbons, the volatile organic compounds, a lot of those are vapors. So that means that they're liquids that have been, you know, the heat has evaporated and there's small droplets in the air. Then those droplets hang on to the particulates, and then the particulates get screened out by the mask. So that N95 is actually doing a fairly decent job stopping the vapors, which again have coalesced onto the particles and the particles. And then, as I said before, the gases have pretty much dissipated. So I'm rather optimistic that the you know, filtering face pieces, at least the good ones, can be a real benefit to individuals and particularly to people who are sensitized.
Well, that's a good piece of info for people to deal with. And again, if I just want to follow up, if you are wearing a mask and don't feel well, you may need to take it off, at least short term, and stop whatever activities you're doing. I think that's the real message. Try to get to where you feel comfortable and safe and stay that way until this passes.
Yeah. So something else I want to throw in, not a lot of people know this or remember this, but if you're wearing a mask, you need to be intentional about improving your liquid uptake, meaning you need to drink more water, people. And part of that is because the mask not only does a good job screening these particles and stuff, but it does filter out some of the water vapor. And so therefore you're breathing drier air, and the drier air is going to allow whatever particles do get through to go deeper into your system. And by drinking more water, you're going to keep your mucous membranes, hydrated, and, a little bit more ability to collect some of those particles, and then even to flush them through your system. There's pretty good studies that show that people who are being exposed to the wildfire smoke over a course of a few days will build up levels of different toxins in their body. And a lot of times that's just because they're not drinking enough water to flush them out. And I know several people, particularly in the naturopath and the integrated medicine field, who say green tea in particular, water and or green tea can be helpful in terms of just detoxing some of that stuff that's getting into your, first into your bloodstream and then into your internal organs and stuff, just because of the contaminants in the air.
Well, just kind of on a side note, going in a slightly different direction, and I agree with what you're saying, and I just wanted to mention that wildfires, forest fires, things like this are not the only thing that cause these types of contaminations in the air that affect people and sensitize individuals. If you remember back, we had some recent volcanoes that had erupted and put so much ash into the air. It was affecting people thousands of miles away. It grounded air traffic through Europe for around a week. So there's a lot of things that are in the air that are going to affect people, and the sensitized group, many times over, even more.
So I want to pick up on that as well. I mean, one of the reasons that they ground airliners in situations like this, either because of the wildfire or the volcanoes, is because of the aggressive nature of those small particles, particularly as they're compressed and put through a jet engine. They can score and damage the insides of those to the point where they can actually have engine failure. And if you think about that, if these particles are corrosive enough that they're damaging stainless steel parts, they can't be good for our lungs. So just lots of warnings to us. There's plenty of evidence around, even just common sense evidence, that would tell us that we shouldn't be exposed to a lot of this. And you were asking earlier, some of the other things people can do. Obviously, if you have whole house HVAC and if you've got filters on the HVAC, you can run the HVAC system even if you just run it on fan, because that pushes air into the house and through the system. And typically most home air systems and HVAC systems, unless they have a energy recovery ventilator or heat recovery ventilator or something like that, that's intentionally bringing air in, typically those are only bringing in 10% outside air. High efficiency furnaces, the ones that have the PVC pipes instead of like the chimneys and stuff, again, those are going to bring in minimal outside air unless they're on the heat cycle, where they bring in the air obviously to dilute the the gases that are being created when they burn the gas or the oil for the furnace. So if you're on the air conditioning mode and you've got a high efficiency furnace and you've got decent filters on it, running that and just running it even on the fan on the on switch rather than on the auto switch should make a good difference. Now, I also want to point out the people who have portable air conditioners, window mount air conditioners, some of these other ones that have, pipes that go in and out and everything, what they call pack units, like you see on the wall of a hotel. Oof, that's tough because there's very little filtration on those. And that's a lot of times bringing in 10, 20, 30% outside air just automatically as you turn those on.
Well, most commercial buildings are spec'd that way. They have to bring in 15 to 20% fresh air. So they're dealing with those issues also.
And I'm not going to get into the whole discussion of the energy efficiency that may not be the energy efficiency, right. But they build the building so tight that they do have to bring in more of the outside air. And then in conditions like this, Lance, you know this as well as I do, they don't have the filtration on those big HVAC units like we have even on a smaller residential unit. So that's a tougher way to go on some of that. But at the same time, that brings up the last main point that I wanted to make, and that is that sometimes we can't rely, if you're a person or you're staying in a hotel because of, your job that took you there to New York City and all of this or whatever it is, sometimes you have to be a little bit more proactive, and particularly if you're sensitized. We talk about creating a refuge, even if you can't fix your whole house. Is there a bedroom? Is there a den? Is there a room in your house that you can turn into a refuge that's going to have better air quality and protect you? And this advance, I'm just blown away. The advance in the air purification systems, which we call proactive air purification, where you're not just relying on it to go through a filter to collect this stuff. You've got ionizers and one of the better ones I think is this multi-cluster ionization and things. These sorts of products can help create these reservoirs of clean air inside a building, so that even if you have to run the air conditioner and it's bringing in some of this contaminant and your filters aren't the greatest, at least you can protect yourself in a bedroom where you spend 8 hours a night when you're sleeping and things like that. That can be a big difference.
It's not a new concept. They teach and talk about that for hurricanes and tornadoes, to have a safe area in your home, a place that's protected from, from things coming through the exterior walls. Well, this is just taking it to another level where you're going to keep your breathable air as clean as possible.
Well, I like that analogy. You're in those cases, for a tornado. So here in the Midwest, we don't have the hurricanes as much, but it's a tornado. And that's exactly what they tell you. You need to have a secure location that in the case of a tornado, you can go into and be better protected from, the damaging effects of the wind. And in a situation like this, particularly the people who are already at risk because they're sensitized, they need to have, think about having that secure location from an air standpoint, just like we would think about having a secure location from a weather standpoint. And doing that with some of these proactive air purifiers. Heck, I was looking at the Best Living Systems website yesterday. They've got plug-in models. Literally just plug into an outlet and is enough to, have some air cleansing that's going on in a room size. They've got ones that are the size of, like a sports bottle or a drinking glass that's designed to fit in a cup holder in a car to improve the air quality in a car. But you can plug those in and use those in a hotel room or in a bedroom or something like that. And these are not necessarily, super expensive items or anything like that. They're reasonably priced and they're worth it.
You know what? And everything you're talking about comes down to do something, improve your condition, be proactive yourself to try to take care of the environment you're in, stay in a healthier and a safer place during conditions like this. And it's going to happen more and more. We didn't really talk about statistics, but from the Weather Channel, they ran some stats yesterday saying that year to date, they have burned up in Canada and the US. Well, let me rephrase that. The yearly average for the US and Canada on forest fires is between 6.5 and 7.5 million acres. The fires so far to date in Canada are 9.3 million. So they're 50% over the yearly total of burned up forest and what it's putting into the air that we're all breathing and changing weather conditions around the world.
And we're in June.
And we're in June. And it's
That's
first
right.
going to get hot and the fire season is going to first come on. And then we got California to deal with and the West Coast. Prepare yourselves, people. Be proactive and take care.
Well, that's what I said. Just if there's things that you can fix now, fix them. If there's things that you can do to prepare for, because this supposedly this one from Canada, hopefully by the middle of next week, we'll have moved on with some shifting weather patterns. Don't just go back to normal and say, that one's over, I don't have to worry about it. because something's going to happen again. And those who are already suffering, those who are kind of on an edge health-wise, sometimes I talk to my clients about being literally almost like standing on a knife's edge. And we want to get you off of that edge so that you don't fall over into a worse scenario. And the way to do that is it's pretty tough to, have the proactive air purifier when you're in the middle of a problem. So you may have to get one now. Let me just also finish with this. I know it's the fire issues and everything, but I'm a victim of my own thinking, so to speak. Neither my wife or I both of us are blessed that we don't have a lot of mold sensitivities or anything like that, even with all the crazy work I've done in the industry. And neither one of us really have expressed a lot of allergies over the years. And this summer, or actually this spring, over the last couple of months, I noticed that my wife was feeling less and less normal, so to speak. And finally, when we dug into it, it was turned out that she was having some respiratory issues and some stuff like that. And the initial doctor visit was, yeah, it's a really awful pollen season. We never followed the pollen ratings or anything because she was never, identified as being allergic. And once we got the idea that she was, being impacted by the outdoor pollen, not something that was going on in our house, ended up getting one of the Chaos air purifiers that Normie recommends. And within hours, she was telling me that she was feeling better running that in the house. And within 2 days, she had already given it to her sister and made me buy her another one. So that's just how it
Okay, then. Well, the stuff works. And, that's the whole thing. And we always talk about, even, tongue in cheek, about you either have a good filter or you are one. And it's all about protecting that you are one. You want to have as much protection around you as you can. But we are going to end this segment. I do want to thank you for your time. And I didn't mention it earlier, but this is one of the segments that we're doing in a multi-part presentation on the seriousness of the wildfires, how it's affecting the U.S. and people with sensitivities, without sensitivities, and what they can do. So hopefully you'll tune in and some of the other segments as we show them. And I want to thank you again for your time. It's always great talking to you, Mike.
Bless you, Lance. It was good. I hope it was helpful for people.
Thank you. Hopefully you were all able to see that. We did a 5-part series on this. The other parts are running on normie.tv. They're scattered throughout the day. And like I said, there's 5 different segments. We did show one additional segment a few weeks back on our regular recertification training, but the rest of them are out there and you can catch them. You can also go to the Normie TV page at normie.org and just click on the TV button and you'll see a schedule. And on there, all 5 segments are listed where you could select them on demand and watch them that way. So that would be the presentation that we had for tonight. As you can see, my voice is a little bit crackier than it was earlier. And that kind of happens from talking. And it's getting a little hazy out again today. So I'm sure the air quality, at least here on the East Coast, has gone downhill a bit. I don't know if you saw any questions or comments coming in. Guys, I wasn't able to watch that while I was doing this.
I didn't see anything. And by the way, I'm not sure crackier is a word, Lance.
Well,
but,
you know what? It's the way it sounds, so it works for me. So anyways, well, I'll tell you what, since I don't see anything else out there, Mike, or I'm sorry, Tim, why don't we jump over to you for some announcements? I know we have a lot of classes coming up. You want to put the schedule out before we shut down the live feeds?
Yes, we do. As you said earlier, it's nose diving right into our busy season. So buckle your seatbelts. When we look at the schedule at training.normie.org. There are a lot of classes coming up beginning next week. So let's highlight a few of those. On the 11th of August, we have the Normie Certified Microbial Screener class, which is a class that's geared toward home inspectors, and that is at our location in Sunrise, Florida, at the Normie Pro Academy. And the next several classes I'm going to talk about are all located there. The following week, the 16th and the 17th, which is Wednesday and Thursday, is the CMW class, the Certified Mold Worker class in Spanish, which is a great class in South Florida. We feel like is an underserved population, the Spanish-speaking population. And so this class is really for those hands-on workers. There's a lot of hands-on training in this class. And that class is a great class for those of you who are remediators working on site. The following week, the 23rd through the 25th, is a CMA CMR class that is also in Spanish. And so that class will be the basic licensing class for the state of Florida, Louisiana, DC, several other locations, and of course, certifying nationally. And included in that class, the first 2 days is, of course, the Florida CEFL 14 hours, which gets you all 14 hours of your continuing educations if you already have your Florida license. The final week of August, the 28th through September 1st, is our Texas CMR class. And you, again, may be scratching your head as to why we have that at our Florida location. Well, first off, it'll get you the Texas remediator license, or at least set you up for that license. But it also is a national certifying class. And you can get certified again in just about any state except for the state of New York. Your Florida license, Louisiana license, DC license, all of those are also possible through this class. It's a 5-day class, so it's a little bit expanded from our normal 3-day CMA CMR class. So you're going to get in a little bit more detail, a little bit more opportunity to interact with the trainers. But again, it sets you up for so many different opportunities in the industry. Then looking ahead to September, we've got another CMA CMR class, the 12th through the 14th, with the CEFL class, of course, and then in Las Vegas, the NCMI class. And as Lance already alluded to, we have a class in Mexico on the 23rd and 24th of October. That's the ISSS class, an advanced class for assessors. And of course, 4 or 5 days on the beach? Who could pass that up? That's what I have, Lance. Anything you want to add to that, or
Well, what you left out was that Mexico class is in Puerto Vallarta. It's at the Marriott Resort on the beach. So yeah, it's going to be tough learning.
Yeah, it will be difficult. Somebody has to do it though.
I know. So, and that's open to anybody, not just Normie members. So please, if you're watching this, you're more than welcome to sign up and take that class. It's an all-inclusive resort. So it kind of sets the stage for what's going to happen.
I got a question here about the class for Texas. As far as the Texas class, it is only a remediation class for Texas. Now, again, we're doing some of the combined CMA, CMR. So if you need CMA for any other state, it will give you that CMA opportunity for those other states that have the assessor license, except for New York. But it does not give you the opportunity for the assessor license in Texas. That's a different class. They won't allow us to teach that concurrently. And we don't have the ability to teach that class just yet. It is simply remediation for the state of Texas.
Correct. All right. Any other announcements for anybody? And Mike, I'm going to ask you to hold off till we shut down the feeds before we close out here. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody that was here with us on all of the public networks, the social media platforms. Glad to see that you're all here. And again, a reminder to the Normie members, if you're going to get the rest of our announcements and take part in the product training that's following our recertification training, you're going to want to go to impact.normie.org. And that'll get you here into our Zoom room so you could take part in the rest of it. For everybody else, please remember to register your CEUs, especially if you are on the other platforms and you're trying to take advantage of that. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. And please We will be starting up our other feeds shortly. So if you wanted to catch any of the other broadcasts, it'll be running, and that does run 24/7. Also, we have the Normie Latino channel running on the Twitch network, which right now we have a lot of the English content with Spanish subtitles running. So we've just kind of moved into that. So that's running out there. And if that is something that you're interested in, it's there for you. And again, at the Normie TV guide at normie.org, you can also find direct links to those channels and all of our podcasts. So give me a moment. I want to shut down. I want to thank everybody for being here with us on the public channels. And we'll see you folks all next week. So please stand by.